And as we prepare to invoke this sacred blessing, this blessing that God instructed Moses and Aaron, that said, when you want to bless the people, when you ask for God's blessing, use these words. And so I ask that we bless each other. So turn to the person next to you. Perhaps if you are wearing a talit, or if they are wearing a talit, place your talit around their shoulders as well. And in that way, we create a Sukkot Shalom, God's ever-present blessings of peace. Eloheinu v'lehem avotenu v'imotenu bareinu b'bracha ha'meshuleshet k'tuva b'Torah, our God and God of all generations, bless us with the threefold benediction of Torah. May God always bless us and keep us. May the light of God's presence shine upon us and be gracious and kind. And may God always bestow us with the favor, the blessing of love, happiness, health, and peace. And you do not so. and feel the presence of God in our lives. Some moments of inner reflection. The moments that we can express those prayers that in our hearts and are in our minds. Some moments of silent prayer. How many of you are familiar with the following scenarios? You're at a party, you're at a gathering, you're at a program. It's time to go. And yet, you spend 30 minutes with your hand on the doorknob, socializing, covering a breadth of topics with the same people that you have been socializing with for the last 2 hours. Hands up. Right. We affectionately call this the Jewish goodbye. I wrote in my letter to all of you in July that this is my last time with you for High Holidays. And we have a wonderful year ahead. We have programs, we have services, and so I want to avoid that Jewish goodbye. So let's focus on the opportunities that we have together throughout the year, and we'll leave the goodbyes for sometime in June. And this High Holidays, I want to focus. I rarely do this, but I want to focus. I have a theme this year. I'm excited. And the theme actually is the congregation and the congregation's vision. Where it is, who it is, and who it's like to become. For the past several months, we've been working together with our leadership in developing a clear vision for Temple Israel. Many people ask, what's really a vision? Well, the Business Dictionary defines vision as an aspirational description of what an organization would like to achieve or accomplish in the midterm or long-term future. It's intended to serve as a clear guide for choosing current and future courses of action. Now, some people are going to say, well, 2 years ago we did this. And it's true. We created a workable vision that we've been utilizing. And many of you were involved in that process. And this process is one which seeks to further hone and clarify and focus that vision. Temple Israel, where Jewish life happens. We strive to be a thriving and inspirational synagogue that's focused on 3 key aspects of synagogue life. First, activities and experiences that we provide internally for ourselves, for our congregation. Services, programs, things that are for us. Secondly, the role Temple has in the larger Jewish community. What is our role in the milieu of the Ottawa community, the Canadian Jewish community, and in the world Jewish community? And the third is how we interact and how we help, how we assist, how we lend our voice to what's right in making the larger Jewish community, the larger community, the secular community, better. So on Kol Nidre, I'll be talking about our relationship and the broader Jewish community. On Yom Kippur morning, we'll explore our responsibility to the larger secular community. But this morning, I'd like to focus on us. Now, Rosh Hashanah is, as we will read in a moment from the Torah, a celebration of creation. One of the 2 readings that are possible from the Torah for Rosh Hashanah, one of them is the story of creation, and we'll read that this morning. Yom Harat HaOlam, the birthday of the world. A time when we think back to those very beginning and building blocks of what it means to create a world. And I suggest that we look at that as a model. Because what I want to do is take a look at the very building blocks of what it means to be a community. what it means to be a sacred community. Many years ago, in a land far, far away, there was a king. And there was music. And the townspeople played music to welcome the king. And the townspeople were told that the king was going to come and visit. And they were all excited. So they decided that they would create a special gift for the king. They said, what does the king like the most? He likes his wine. We're going to give him the biggest barrel of wine he's ever seen. And they said, well, how are we going to do this? He said, each person in the community is going to take and find their own flask of wine. They're going to climb the ladder to this very big barrel, and they're going to put their flask of wine into the barrel, and that way, at the end, we'll have this fabulous huge barrel filled with wonderful wine. And so it went. And each day there was a line of people climbing up and down the ladder, placing their flask into the larger barrel. And the king arrived. And the people were so excited. And they presented the king with his beautiful goblet. And they filled the goblet from the barrel. And they told him that this huge barrel of wine was just for him. And the king took a sip. And his face, and they said, what's wrong? He said, it's only water. You see, everybody in the community had the same idea. Who would know if just I put a bottle of water in? Clearly, everybody had this same concept, that their one single bottle of water wouldn't affect this huge vat of wine. You see, communities are built by people, and they are sustained by relationships. They're built by people, and they're sustained by relationships. In the coming months, we'll ask for your input into what this final vision that we are creating is going to be, of what this congregation would like to become. And once we've created this vision, we have to make sure that we have both the people power, which we have. We're here, we're strong. But we also have to make sure that our building can support the vision. We already know that parts of our building need repair and renovation. We've spoken about this before. And when we've talked about it with our leadership, and our leadership has decided that rather than just fix what we have, we need to create a clear idea of what we want to be, so that the building then best is able to fulfill this vision. Patsy? Like this. Everybody knows Patsy Royer. And Patsy's taken on the task, and the leadership has trusted her to guide us through this process, to make these wise decisions to ensure that if we're going to expend significant resources, that we're going to fix the building in some way, that we do it in a way that fulfills the vision that we have for our congregation. So we've been in touch with a few architecture firms, and we've chosen one to work with. And eventually we'll get to thinking about what we're doing. But that's a ways off. Because as we hone this vision, we need to spend our time thinking really about what temple truly is. First and foremost, we are the Reformed congregation in Ottawa. We started 52 years ago, part of the Union of American Hebrew Congregations, as it was called at the time, now called the Union for Reformed Judaism. But we don't spend a lot of time typically talking about what that means. Well, the URJ is the largest Jewish movement in North America, in the world, actually. We have about 1,000 congregations. How many people grew up in youth group or participated in youth group? Right. All of those, part of the North American Federation of Temple Youth. Our camp systems, including Camp George, that many of our kids are choosing to go to and have for many years. And the Reform movement's own vision includes this line. Reformed Judaism asks us to seek the holiness that is present throughout creation through reflection, critical study, and sacred acts, so as to renew our living covenant with God, the people Israel, humankind, and the earth. Okay, that seems clear, right? But what does it mean for us? Well, I think part of the struggle is how do you actually become a sacred community? Not just a community, not just a group of people tied together with a common interest or a history. We understand that that's valuable. But this idea of sacred community, and this idea that the impact that a sacred community can have on our lives is one that speaks in a language of hope, a language of belonging. And I would say that the best place, the only place that can really create that, is the synagogue. Rabbi Adam Greenwald has said, religion has the capacity to draw us together, and religion has the equal capacity to split us apart. And yet, he adds, religion's critics would do well to acknowledge the benefits that a spiritual community has brought to countless lives, the way that sacred wisdom has inspired people over the millennia, inspired them to acts of goodness, of neighborly kindness. Now, one of my colleagues posted the following on Facebook. It was from a church publication that said, people still need a shelter from life's storms. People still need a place of quiet refuge. People need a place where they can connect with one another and with God. The church, or we would say the synagogue, has all of that. The problem is that when we ask people and we do the studies say that the last place people go looking for those very things that they need are their place of worship. Because this value of Kol Yisrael Arvim Zeh B'Zeh, each one of us is responsible or connected to one another, whether it's another synagogue member, somebody who's come on a regular basis, a guest, all of that, all of those people create sacred community when they think of themselves as part of that larger whole. We've talked about Ron Wilson and his book, Relational Judaism, before. And I want to remind you of a great story. Ron arrived at the synagogue. One morning, he was a guest speaker. He arrives early. As most places, synagogues, when you arrive early, it's easy to find a seat. Rows and rows of empty seats in a large sanctuary. He finds an empty row, he sits down. The service begins. There's nobody sitting around him. And at some point, shortly after the service began, he feels a tap on his shoulder. He looks up, and an elderly gentleman says, "Excuse me, you're in my seat." Rabbi Garden spoke yesterday, but everybody sitting in the same seats year after year. A sacred welcome? Perhaps not. Now, I know that doesn't happen at temple. No, really, it doesn't. We are very good at hello. We are wonderful at welcoming people. People come through our doors. There are people who are always welcoming them. We have ushers, we have greeters, we have members of the congregation. I know that we're good at this because people tell me after they've been for a few, it was so wonderful to be warmly greeted. So we're great at the hello. But we're not so great is at the next stage. The stage of come be a part of the family. We need some more. We often struggle to include newcomers. We sort of have this idea that people have to percolate for a bit before they get included. We have to ask ourselves, how many people and how often do we invite people for holidays, for Shabbat? How many times do we meet people at a service and invite them for something at our homes? Tom Friedman wrote a recent book that said, "Thank you for being late." You know, this resonates with many people. But he says, when people feel embedded in a community, they feel protected, respected, and connected. I like the alliteration. He goes on and says that the feeling is more important than ever because when people feel protected, respected, and connected in a healthy community, it generates a critical feeling of trust. And when people trust each other, they're far more adaptable, they're far more flexible, they're far more open. And they're more willing to think long term. When there's trust in the room, people are more inclined to collaborate, to experiment, to open themselves to others, to new ideas, to novel approaches. These are the foundations of being a sacred community. However, it can only offer these feelings of being protected, respected, connected, when we, as part of the community, say not only Hineni, here I am, but when we are fully present. When each of us takes a flask of wine and pours it into the large barrel and not the water. That's where our connections come from, where respect is acquired and where people feel somebody else has my back. A young rabbi once expressed surprise that her congregants, many of whom were elderly, all showed up one snowy Shabbat. She mentioned her surprise, and the members explained that, well, they were there because they didn't want to disappoint the other members of the community. You don't always do things for yourself, I said. Sometimes you have to take care of other people's needs before yours. The young rabbi noted that for her, as a part of a generation which regards, by and large, religion as something designed to meet my need, an individual's need, this was a startling concept. That members of a congregation actually felt an obligation to the community, to the larger whole. For us to truly be a sacred community that welcomes and embraces each other, whether it's the regular, the stranger, the guest, the member, we have to commit to a term that Sheryl Sandberg kind of coined, which is leaning in, being present, being engaged in meaningful and purposeful relationships with each other. Last year, I had the opportunity to visit Shanghai, where my mother, her parents, and grandparents, and about 25,000 Jews sought refuge during the war. Now, my grandfather's family, a few cousins, had been part of a group of families who had been in Shanghai for about 100 years. And they were part of these industrial Western families who came to develop and build the city. They were Sephardic Jews from Baghdad in Italy. And one of their contributions was to build the Ohel Rachel synagogue in Shanghai. Today, the building is part of the Chinese education and the ministry there. And the Jewish community is only allowed to use the building 6 times a year. I'll spare you the long story, but my friend Shlomit, who's with us from the Israeli embassy, helped me out, and it took the intervention of at least 2 Israeli embassies so that I could just get into the building and see it. When you enter the synagogue, it's an empty space. The Aron HaKodesh, the sacred ark, stands at the end of the room. Perhaps the only thing that distinguishes this as a Jewish space. And while I was there, I could powerfully feel the echoes of history. But it also felt as empty as it was. And the sign on the front of the building read, "Former home of the Ohel Rachel synagogue." And when I read it as I entered the building, I was hurt, offended. Not former. This is the building. And yet, in truth, the sign is right. The synagogue is really no longer there. The people who made up the congregation have long since gone. My relatives who celebrated Rosh Hashanah in that space haven't been there in decades. You see, sacred communities don't just happen. And they're not part of spaces, they're not part of buildings. Buildings are there to help us create a sacred community. And that sacred community has to be built and it has to be nurtured. And each of us has to bring ourselves to that process. We each have to fill that barrel with wine, not with water. Each of us has to accept our sense of being responsible for one another. There's a story that's told of a nobleman who wanted to leave a legacy. And so he decided to build a synagogue. But he wouldn't show anybody the plans. He had the synagogue built, imagine, right? You imagine building a synagogue without a committee? Amazing. He built the synagogue and then invited everybody in. And as the people were astounded at the beauty of the space. Somebody on the tour said, "It's a little dark. Where are the lights?" And he pointed to holes, little brackets along the walls. And he said, "Those are for you." And he handed out the torches. And he said, "Each of us has a place to place our torch. And when our place is dark, we know that we're not here. We know that our community is less full." So this year, as we embark on this process of focusing and learning, take your lamp. Take your lamp, and whether that lamp is filled with bright lights of social justice, of prayer, of study, of learning, of activities, of socializing, of caring for others, of giving of ourselves, we take our lamps and we brighten our community. We brighten our lights so that we see each other's light. We see and we hope. We feel the comfort. And most importantly, we know that we are together. It is then that we will truly create a Kehillah Kedoshah, a sacred community. Wishing you all a Shana Tova U'Metuka, a good year, a sweet year. Amen.